Hey everyone, welcome to Pure Vision Reviews. I'm Jay, and today we're going to be talking about a really fun game, an important game during the Super Nintendo era, which is Chrono Trigger. Um, to start, while the opening or cinematic of the game is playing, I'll run down a few different segments of the review. I'll give you my overall score, and I'll put on some additional feedback and some information at the bottom of the video on YouTube when it gets posted later today. Okay. So what I wanted to do first is talk about the brief history about Chrono Trigger and more or less the designer of the game, the company behind it, SquareSoft, and yeah, basically, it came out around the time of early 1995 in Japan, right? And with its release, it blew up with regards to the sales. The sales for the game were so high in early 95 that Squaresoft and Square, well, the company is called Square in Japan, but subsidiary Squaresoft for releasing the titles abroad, like in the US and Europe and everything. Anyways, um, the game had done so well. It sold to like anywhere from like 2 to 2.5 million copies in the first month on the market in Japan. So they gave the green light to go ahead and translate the game and see its release worldwide. Luckily, it was late in the time of the Super NES's era on the market because the Super NES came out on the market around early 1991 worldwide, and it was already 4 to 5 years into the system's life cycle. So, with that said, we're very fortunate, us in the U.S. and in Europe, to have received this title in the first place. I was hoping that this game would come stateside at the time because back in the day, I was reading Nintendo Power. It's spread on some of the issues, its features, pictures, the layout of the game, and everything. And I was like, oh my god, if they don't release this thing in the U.S., I'm gonna be super upset, right? So what ended up happening is that yeah, we got the green light for the game to come out in late 1995, around late August actually. Oh man, I was so pumped. I was so happy when it came out and got to play it for the first time. You know how it is. The game maker, the developer, and the game maker, SquareSoft, they're always risking and pushing the Super NES to its limits with all of its releases prior to Chrono Trigger. When it comes out to games with regards to like Secret of Mana or Seiken Densetsu 3, otherwise known as Trials of Mana or Secret of Mana 2, stateside or in Europe. Um, they had done also some releases that didn't make it abroad out of Japan, like Bahamut Lagoon and Rouge's Treasure and Treasure Hunter G, and some other titles like that. You could see from Final Fantasy 4 to Final Fantasy 5, and then from 5 to 6, the graphics were exponentially improved and done on a greater scale than any of their previous releases for the system on the Super NES. So it's really neat to see how the company had come across different genres and mainly RPG, and how they grew as a company and working with the system and developing for it. That they just continue to push the system to its limits. And unbeknownst to us, this game gets spread on one of the Nintendo Power issues um, back in the day, like in 1994, late 93, sometime in 94. And it wasn't until finally that, it released. The hype surrounding this game abroad, outside of Japan, was just enormous. Enormous. The graphics were nothing that had ever been presented in a video game on the Super NES before it. I mean, this type of game surpasses any other graphics that you could graphically see on the system. That includes Secret of Mana, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Uh, what other great RPGs? Illusion of Gaia, stuff like that. Secret of Evermore. this game, and not only that, it had a time travel mechanic integrated in part of its story, which made things even cooler and even even more appealing to the general gamer, casual gamer, And so yeah, it released in early '95 in Japan, and we got it in the United States sometime in August. I think it was like mid to late August, just before the school year began. When it came out in '95, I must have been no older than 13, 14 years old, and I was heavily into gaming. This was one of my top releases for the year. So as soon as I got it, the day came. Let me start again. The day came when the game was finally set to be released in stores. Other stores probably got it before the store that was nearby my house got it. Game stores like Electronics Boutique, Babbage's, EB Games, stuff like that. I'm pretty sure they may have gotten the title about a few days before or a week before the store near my house got it. There was an old store by my house called Die Hard, and they were a very small niche kind of a store focusing mainly on video games, consoles, and accessories. They weren't around for more than, let's say, 5 or 6 years in the area of where I grew up. But long story short, me and a friend of mine, a close friend of mine at the time, pre-ordered it from the same exact store. And when the day came that we had heard that the shipment was due to arrive and, copies would be handed out to the pre-order customers, we kept calling and calling and calling. And it wasn't until, typically shipments that come via UPS, FedEx, or DHL, they reach these stores with their shipments by no later than 4 to 5 p.m. Unfortunately, that day it was raining really hard in late August. It was just bad weather throughout the whole day and early evening, right? And I remember I was also short on money. So I had requested like an extra $10 to $15 from my grandparents who were visiting, and they ended up giving me the money. I had like 65 on me, and the game was like $79.99 back in the day at the store. It was a total of like $84.50 or something. So I got the last $15, and then on the way over there, my mom had given me like an extra few bucks, like $4 to cover tax. My friend went in immediately throughout the rain. He's like, "I'm going in first. I'm going in first, Jake." He goes in, gets the title, runs back to the car within like 5 minutes. I'm like, "All right, you got it. All right, cool. They got the pre-order copies. They got more copies." I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna go now because it was pouring so hard." I had to run from the car to the store and then from the store to the car again with everything. So I ran there. I had the guy open up the box, show me the copies, and I'm like, "Give me the game. I got to get out of here because you guys are about to close." The shipment didn't arrive to the store until like 7 o'clock at night, and they closed by 9. So go figure. We kept calling and calling the store for like hours, from like 3 p.m. until 6, until finally said, "Yeah, the UPS truck is coming. They just notified us. They'll be here by 7. So if you want, get here around that time before we close, and you'll get your copy." So we showed up, we got our copies, and that's about it. That's the story behind me and how I acquired the title. It was a very difficult title also to acquire because I had heard later on that there weren't many copies that were made for the U.S. market. So if you were fortunate to get your hands on a copy, brand new, fresh sealed, you're one of the few and lucky ones, to be honest, because this came out late in the life cycle of the Super Nintendo, as I mentioned earlier on in this review. So with that all being said, let's just get to the game. And as you can see from the video playing on my computer, this is the opening cinematic for the game. And as you can already tell or imagine, the graphics are top notch, the music is top notch. The game really pushes the Super Nintendo, you can tell, to the limits of what it means orally and graphically. It's just everything about this game screams 10 out of 10 game, and that's precisely the score that have written and displayed on the bottom of the YouTube video some of the detailed information. You'll see my scores will be there. I gave this game, no doubt, hands down, right after I beat it back, 30 years ago. I couldn't believe like what I had just experienced. It was an experience of a lifetime. Definitely one of the Super NES's finest titles, a masterpiece, right? It had a great story, time travel related. I don't want to get into the gifs and nook and cranny of the story, but basically Luca, a friend of Chrono, right there in the center, running with Robo, develops a time travel device, shows it to Chrono. It malfunctions and accidentally transports them to the past. And then from then on and there forth, you come across different time eras, and you've got to defeat, you got your typical dungeons, you got your enemies, you got your bosses, you got your main characters and main antagonists. And what makes the game great and what keeps things flowing so smoothly is not only the animation and the graphics and music, but it's also the battle system. As you can see here, the frog falling and trampling on all the enemies. That's one of the summons or texts that you can produce later in the game. You have your original text, you have your double text, and you have your triple text. The combinations of all that you can do combined in the game with regards to all the characters you can play as is unheard of. Unheard of. And also, the duration of the game was very long. I was very satisfied with the overall length of the game. More or less, it takes the average gamer like 20 to 30 hours to beat, which is a great length of time, and you get bang for your buck for this game. You know. Last but not least, the impact of the game to the industry in general was everlasting. Gamers and those that are nostalgic still talk about this game to this very day. How hard it is to find on the secondhand market if you want to be a pure enthusiast. Play it on your Nintendo DS, your Super Nintendo, or if you want to play it on even PlayStation 1, Final Fantasy Chronicles, when it released with Final Fantasy 4. Very hard to find on the secondhand market, or even brand new, sealed, shrink wrap to this day. These copies sell for thousands upon tens of thousands of dollars, if that were the case, or even graded. The total sales of the game to this day are upwards of 4 to 5 million in total. I think the first year it was on the market, the total sales were like 3 million to 3.5, consuming Japan, US, and European markets, which is out of this world, especially for a JRPG at the time. It's just that it has an enormous fan base to this day. It's a great following. It's an easy game to pick up. It's not too complicated. Everything about it screams, top quality. You had the very best in the business working on the game. Hironobu Sakaguchi, Yasunori Mitsuda, Nobuo Uematsu filled in for some of the music tracks that got deleted along the way when they were making the game accidentally. Who else am I forgetting? Akira Toriyama, the late Akira Toriyama, may he rest in peace, for the animation and artwork behind the game. And also Yuji Horii, I believe is his name, from Dragon Quest, had his fill-in on the game as well. There's just so many things that can be said about this game, this great game, that I can go on and on and on and on about it. But you owe it to yourself, anyone out there that's watching this review, this retro review. You owe it to yourselves, if you've never played it, to pick up a copy of it and either play it on Android, Steam, your PC, DS, 3DS, because they're backwards compatible, or an original Super Nintendo. Okay, there's nothing really more that I can say to bring up this game any more than I have already. Everything about it is just of utmost superb caliber. Again, it's a score of 10 out of 10. no ifs, ands, or buts. One of the Super NES's finest titles, a masterpiece. Plain and simple. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is my first review, being under the new moniker, under Pure Vision Reviews. If you feel like leaving a comment or adding any of your take to what you've seen and heard through this review, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I'll reply to you as soon as humanly possible, okay? Thank you so much for taking the time, and take care.